Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a very intimate session. And my first question is, how are you today? Good? Thank you very much. I am sure you're good and that you enjoy your stay at this beautiful city of Istanbul, as well as your presence to this well-organized and nice bearing and power transmission forum. My name is Jean-Marie Fink. I graduated a Master of Economics from the University of Strasbourg and started my business life with a small company called Schaeffler. I worked for Dr. Schaeffler as sales director for INA France. And during my period with INA, I get the possibility of creating NTN France as a joint venture between NTN Osaka, the bearing manufacturer, and INA France. I got also the opportunity to create my own distribution company called Roulement Service, which means bearing service. I developed the company to 100 million euro turnover with 350 people and 35 branches in France. Lately, I sold this company to Brammer. Brammer, which now is Rubix. I became board member of Brammer, in charge of supplier strategy for bearings, linear motion, and seals. At that time, this was more than 50% of the sales of Brammer. To give you an idea, my buying power in terms of bearings for Brammer was 120 million euros per year. So that was quite important at that time. Over the supplier task, I also get the mission of buying more businesses in Europe to make Brammer the only pan-European MRO distribution business in Europe. We achieved that by about 2004, when I left the company to create my own distribution business, which is JMF Consulting, standing for Jean-Marie Fink Consulting, of course. In the early days of the creation of JMF Consulting, as I had a well-known experience of manufacturing with INA and of distribution with Roulement Service and Brammer, a lot of manufacturers came to see me and asked me to help them to create a concept for distribution in their own business. So how can I, manufacturer, be a good counterpart to the distribution? How can I serve the best distribution? And I did that for companies like SKF, Schaeffler, Henkel Loctite, Frudenberg for a long, long time, and some others. In a second time, distribution company came to me to get an advice on their acquisition strategy. So I worked for companies like Bianchi Industrial in Italy, Descour & Cabot, which is known as Dexis on the distribution business, and also Rubix. So I helped the consolidation of the European distribution business, which is still today very fragmented. So that's That's my story. That's my life. And now we have to perform some work together to make you understand the possibilities of improving the profitability of distribution. So the first theme I wanted to speak with you is to describe you the worldwide mechanical power transmission market. The second one is which are the most used, the most common measurement of profitability. How can we improve the measurements we made? Conclusion. And finally, I want to give you a takeaway. What can you really do in the life of your business? The MPT worldwide market is made by bearing and leader motion for 45%, gearboxes and motors for 20%, chains and belts for 14%, seals for 10%, clutches and couplings for 5%, and others for 6%. That's the usual assessment of the MPT market, how it is structured. So you see that bearings are really the almost half of the market of MPT. Now, if we try to calculate the volume which is involved by these products, we can go through the worldwide bearing production, which with all these actors together is 50.5 billion euro worldwide, of which 10 billion is sold by the manufacturers to the aftermarket, which I mean distributors, because along distributors, many of the manufacturers of bearings serve also directly some industries like cement works, steel mills, paper mills. So there is a mix of aftermarket between direct supply from manufacturers and indirect supply through distributors. So if we still say that bearings are 45% of the worldwide MPT market, then the calculation very simply gives that the worldwide market of MPT is 116 billion euros. I mean, all these numbers are big and quite not easy to assess, but the numbers I give you is my findings in different books, in different discussions with different manufacturers. I mean, it's almost my science, my own science, which gives me these numbers. If we say 116 billion, that's the worldwide market of production of MPT. There is also a consensus among experts that 33% is aftermarket. So this gives two numbers. The first number is the 33% as a sell-in number, which means that is the volume of annual purchasing from the manufacturers to the distributors. Sell-in. The second number is what I call the sell-out, which is the volume of business sold by distribution to their own customers. So, as you've seen, MPT, 57 billion worldwide, which is quite a big number and gives us a position in worldwide markets quite important. How does it structure worldwide? These 57 billion. Our 25% are in Europe, 22% US, and the biggest part, almost 50% in Asia. The rest of the world, only very little. So the three pivotal markets of MPT aftermarket in the world are Asia, Europe, and US. Europe, the biggest MPT market of Europe is, of course, Germany. Germany is about 50% of the industrial production of Europe. So 40% represents just the size of Germany in terms of production. The second biggest manufacturing country in Europe is Italy. Italy counts for 20%, half of Germany. Then come France and UK. The aftermarket basically is a function of the industrial capacity of the countries. Only if a country has an industry, he needs maintenance, repair, and overhaul operations. So the base of aftermarket is industry. If we look at recent sales history, and we say that the normal level to be in black numbers for the distribution industry is 100. 2020, COVID year, was a bad year, almost 10% below the 100 normal line. So in terms of profit, they were very bad. The year after, 2021, there was a recovery, but still the profits were bad. In 2022, over normal, and the profits were black again. 2023 was a good year with 113 level, and 2024 was a bit challenging. And if you ask me for 2025, it's going to be a difficult year because all these worldwide tariffs, wars in Ukraine and wars between India and Pakistan creates a lot of uncertainty, and uncertainty is not good for industrial business, as you know. So I believe 2025 and 2026 in terms of profit for distribution will be quite challenging. The conclusion of that slide is that profit is sales dependent. When the level of sales is above normal, above 100, profits are good. If it's below 100, profits are difficult. If we make a little comparison between European and US distribution, the size of the market, 50 billion each, one in dollars, one in euros, are similar. The productivity per employee are different, quite higher in US and quite a little bit smaller in Europe. Average e-commerce, the Americans are way ahead of us with an average of 17 to 20% e-commerce in their sales, with two giants, two very big companies, Grainger, which is 18 billion euro turnover, and this 18 billion euro are made over 27% was e-commerce, but internet commerce is more than 57% of the turnover of Grainger. And Grainger is a mixed model because they have very big internet commerce, and some branches in the US. Today, the biggest player in e-commerce is Amazon Business, and their weight today is 47 billion US dollar worldwide. And it's quite easy. Any buyer from any company can order from Amazon around his swimming pool during the weekend and get what he wants. So it's a very, very easy to do platform. Stock turn a little bit bigger in US than in Europe. And return on sales, I will come later on to explain it, is simply the profit on sales. So 2% to 5% profit on sales is usual in US. The best in US do between 7 and 10%. In Europe, it's between 2 and 8. Small for the big companies, high for the small companies, which is also a normal thing. But the distribution business is still fragmented, scattered in both countries, because 80% of distributors in US employ less than 20 people. And in Europe, 63% of companies have sales less than 25 million. So be aware of the fact that there are some giants. In US, they are motion industry, applied industrial technology, Grainger, Amazon, but the vast majority of the business is still made by tiny little companies through the country. So if I add all the big ones of US together, they are less than 20% of the total business of aftermarket in US. Same in Europe. The big players in Europe are Rubix, Dexis, and they count less than 3% of the total business of distribution in Europe. So it's for manufacturers, the problem is there are a lot of tiny companies and not very much big ones. And the share of the market of the big ones is still very, very small. If we go to a typical income statement, now I'm going to explain you the ratios of profitability. The normal structure of the income statement is sales 100, COGS. COGS means cost of goods sold. Cost of goods sold is the price you pay to get the products in your company. And the average gross margin in Europe is 35%. So if you say my gross margin is 35 and my costs are 30, then it leaves you with 5% profit, or 5%, yes, 0.5 million in my example. Traditionally, the people cost is 17.5% of sales in Europe, and all the other costs are 12.5%, making this 30%. So that's very, very traditional. You can put it in another way. If you try to find what is fixed cost, I say that people cost is fixed cost because it's very difficult in Europe to get rid of people if you need to reduce the number of people in the company. It's very difficult. So I state that people cost is a fixed cost. The other fixed costs are around 0.75 million euros, and all costs again are 3 million euro, making 30%. That's typical, and it's also about clear for US in the same sense. Now, let's go to the balance sheet. On the asset side, you have the accounts receivable, which is the money you are waiting to have from your customers. Typically in Europe, it's 60 days of sales. You have also the inventory. I stated it to be 1/4 of the yearly COGS, which is 162. So it gives total assets of 314. Liabilities, the biggest liability is the money you owe to your suppliers, which is 60 days of purchase. You have long-term liabilities. Many of the companies have loan from banks. That makes 0.77. So the total liabilities are 1.57, and the net worth of the company 1.57 to get back to the 314. Is that clear? So, which are the profitability measurements? There are two most popular. The first one is return on sales. It measures operational profit on sales, or EBITDA on sales. EBITDA meaning earnings before interest, taxes, depreciations, and amortizations. The EBITDA is very useful in manufacturing company because there is a lot of investment into machines and materials and things like that. But it's not very, very useful in distribution where investment in machines is very, very small. So this is the most popular, the most employed profitability measurement is return on sales. Then you can also measure it by return on assets, which is PBT on total assets. That's why I made the calculations of assets before to give you how it shows if you compare PBT to the assets. In our example, return on sales is 5%, and return on assets is 0.5 divided by 314, which is almost 16%. So those are the consideration to take for the owner or the owners of a distribution business to assess how profitable they are. You have to calculate each year on your income statement and your balance sheet these two numbers to see exactly where you are. And why have you to do that? Because most experts say that below a return of sales of 5%, you cannot survive very long. Because you cannot afford the investment in terms of internet, ERP, inventory management, which is needed in your company. So if you don't invest that, you don't know which are the numbers. Not knowing the numbers, you are lost. Okay? Another view is that good companies should have 25% of GM as profit before tax. So the two numbers give 0.875 million compared to the 5 which I showed you in the normal income statement. So 5 is not good enough. 5% is not good enough. You should go to 0 or 8.75%. Return on assets, the good number should be 20% of total assets, which in our case is 0.628 million. But the real goal for a good distributor is to perform 10% of sales as profit before tax. That's where you are in the good class of distribution profitability. Just to give you another view, which is the break-even point. What is the break-even point? It's the volume of sales at which you make zero loss, zero gain. You just cover your cost. And it's important to know that point or that level because it gives you a view in terms of recession, how low can be your sales to break even, to make no loss. It's important for you to know. And in our example, and that's universal, you can accept a 14% decrease of sales and still making no loss. Very important to you, don't be paranoid about a sales decrease, just manage the sales decrease to be not lower than 14%. Important point for you. So now we have the measurement. We know which are the values. We know what you should do, which level we should reach. So what can we do? We can act on sales. We can act on COGS. We can act on gross margin. We can act on fixed cost. And we can act on investment. And possibly, these are the 5 main buttons which you can turn to adjust your profitability. There are 6 levers for me and many actions. The first lever is more sales without more fixed cost. You sell more, and your people, your software are more productive. You make more sales with exactly the same cost. The second one, easy one, buy lower. So act on your COGS. I come back to that later. Sell higher. Get more margin from the market for your product. Find a differentiation factor between you and the others. Don't be a me too. Yes, I can supply you the same product and the other company. No, I supply the same product with something different, with something more. You have to find that. Less fixed cost with same sales, or less people, less investment for same sales, and less inventory for same sales. And less accounts receivable. You get the money faster from your customers. Very difficult to do in those days. And possibly do all together. Assume you make a 3% improvement on all the different levels. So this slide is horrible, I know, but it's quite easy to read. You have to read it from right to left. And the right, extreme right column gives you the gain in percentage of the different actions you can make to improve the profitability. So you can make a 39% gain if you buy lower by 3%. And this is tricky because you cannot run to your supplier and say, oh, give me 3% better prices. You need to find a counterpart. You need to find something you give to get something you take. You cannot just claim, I want to improve my profitability, so I need 3% better prices. Give me 3% better prices because I will do for you more market research. Consolidate my product on your brand. Do common marketing actions together. So find a template to satisfy your supplier. You cannot just go and run for 3%. You have to demonstrate what you bring to the supplier. But it's the action by which the PBT gain is the best. The second action and third action where you gain 21%, the first is to sell higher. Instead of a gross margin of 35, you have 35 times 1.03, which gives you 1.05 more profit, and the profit becomes 605. First case, 695. Second case, 605. More sales for same cost, you have the same gain, 605. Less cost, it's 18%, so it's still valuable. But you have to reduce people, to reduce investment. It's more internally turned and quite difficult to achieve because you need your people, you need your software. You cannot do it easily. Or there is a step change in software which brings you much more than the older ones. The last one, less investment, is really not really useful. So now let's have a dream. You increase sales by 3%. So instead of 100, they become 103. You increase your gross margin by 3%. Instead of being 35%, it's 36.05. Okay? And you decrease the cost by 3%. That's the full dream. If you do that, your profit before tax percentage becomes 803%. 803%, let's say 8%. And the real profit is 103 times per, which is 0.827 million, or it's a mistake there. It's 0.827 million euro. So instead of €500,000, it's 800,000 euro. That's the gain, the dream, if you achieve a 3% improvement of each of these three levers to act on. As I said, the third one needs a real understanding with your suppliers. Not only running to have more rebate, more discount, etc., but also to find actions in which you can justify the fact that you want better prices. The second one is your people have to be more proactive in selling and differentiate yourself from your competitor to justify a better price for a better service. But that also needs a platform to discuss with your people and to bring to the end user. The last one, decrease cost. I believe that's really a difficult one, but still you can look in the different corners of your perimeter to see where you can take a little bit of cost away. But the effect is very important. I mean, you cannot do it from today to tomorrow. So you have to do it in a step plan, and my recommendation is to do it over 3 years at a step of 1% per year. That's not too much, is achievable. You will convince your people that you can do it. You can do a 1% improvement of profitability each year without getting them scared, without getting them adverse to you. And that's, for me, the best measure you can take to achieve a better profitability. So, in real life, what should you do? First, combine all possible levers. There is an assessment that how do pygmies eat an elephant? Bite. There are many. They gather around the elephant and each takes a bite. Create a plan over 3 to 4 years to achieve what you need to achieve. And the profitability target is dependent on what the owners want to achieve and also the life cycle of company. Is a company young? Is a company middle-aged? Is a company old? All these profitability measurements and improvements depend on those things. And you cannot do all in one stage. The most important for me is to get your people on board. And they are often much more creative than you would expect. You need really to get them mobilized, committed to a goal which they accept from you. That's another important point. The target has to be accepted by the people. Not only you in your book, in your paperboard, but just also shared among your people. And the last one, you have every quarter to measure the progress and to report to people in which situation you are, and are you good, are you bad, are you on target, are you below target. But this is a constant process to mobilize people. So PBT target for me is 10% on sales and a return on assets of 30%. That's what you should have in your mind. I need to have 10% of sales as profit or 30% on assets as profit. Only if you do that, you can have enough money to invest into the future. Or if you don't invest enough into the future, not doing anything, staying on place, you lose ground. You lose ground more and more. So it's no rocket science. It's just everyday sweat and commitment. Many people in distribution are what I call me toos. Oh, my competitor does that. I'm doing that too. Me too. So don't let the market dictate your price level. You have to find factors to differentiate yourself from others. Go and invest in productivity at the 3 levels which I described. Get out of the 40% low profit companies, because those companies are not going to be living very long. Thank you for your attention. Any questions? I'm over there. D, meeting table D for Delta 306. Thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jean-Marie Fink. Thank you for this insightful presentation.